puppetry lies at the center of a beautiful multidisciplinary art form. Its pure synergy, in my humble opinion, comes from a beautiful mix of performance, a physical, mental, emotional activity, and matched with a reciprocal shared experience, which has an almost magical quality to it. Puppetry funny peculiar, you could call it. I'd like to share with you a little of what I've learned over the past 25 years with my experience of improvised puppetry. And I think I'll start with a couple of memories that I remember that perhaps inspired me to follow the creative path I have so far. The first memory is me, sitting on the stairs, puppeteering a ventriloquist puppet in front of my family and friends. Its head is made out of a plastic rugby ball, and I've perched a mop on top for its hair. I've slashed a slice through the front of its face to make its mouth, and I can lever it open and closed with a cigar I've made out of a pencil dipped in brown paint. I think my family enjoyed the performance. I certainly did, despite the fact that my hand was sweating profusely inside that plastic rugby ball. Definitely an occupational hazard for the years to come. The second memory I have is when, aged about 11, I went to the cinema to see the Jim Henson Company's movie, The Dark Crystal. Now, I was already a fan of the Muppets, a huge puppet family, an extended family of fuzz, fun, fleece, and frivolity, but this was something entirely different. A whole new world of screeching, gnarled creatures, hyperactive plants, and definitely a brand new and very darker, sinister tone. I distinctly remember looking up at the screen and thinking to myself, wow, so nothing is impossible. What I think I was trying to describe as accurately as I could as an 11-year-old was the sudden realization that creativity could make magic happen. There on the screen, the Jim Henson Company, the writers, the directors, producers, the fabricators, the performers, the puppeteers, the writers, they'd all worked together to build a whole new world, literally from the ground up. I had a very supportive family, tolerant even, and they were really keen to support all my passions and creativities. I remember my dad was really patient. He would draw with me every morning, and he would teach me how to draw curvaceous cartoon boats that grew out of the infinity symbol. I was desperate to learn how to draw the Judge Dredd character from the 2000 AD comics. My favorite artist was Carlos Esquerra, and I copied what I thought was a pretty good version, but instead of painting it in oils on canvas, I painted it in oils on my large plastic bedroom door. It took approximately, well, it felt like months to dry. Every few days I would just go and check to see if it had dried. No, still wet. But it was the performing arts. My local amateur pantomime was where I first tried a collaborative, shared performance experience, and it really opened my eyes. When I'm puppeteering, I'm trying to find that sweet spot. Not physically. Puppetry isn't renowned for its level of comfort, but I'm trying to find that almost dreamlike state where you're not so much thinking and intellectualizing all your activities, but you're trying to find that X, Y, and Z axes of your puppet's performance area. In a way, it's a bit like when you're learning to drive. There's so much information coming in, it can feel almost overwhelming, but after a while, your consciousness expands to embody the whole vehicle, and you forget about all those micro decisions you're making, and you hopefully arrive safely without all your passengers screaming in terror. As a TV puppeteer, I'm usually watching my performance on a small screen, a monitor, laying at 35 degrees off the horizontal, arms squeezed through a small access hole, perhaps the latest version of the script stuck to the monitor, and I'm learning the space. I'm trying to use my muscle memory to figure out where this character is going to perform. But I'm also aware of the difference between the cheated 2 dimensions on the screen and the real-world obstacles that I'm puppeteering around. Now, these obstacles can range from beautiful but abrasive props and sets, other puppeteers and puppets, camera lenses, and on one occasion, a very real and very angry eagle owl. I'm really fortunate. I've puppeteered with some amazing puppeteer teams. Together, we've performed puppets that were cute and fleece-coated, 3D printed, scaly, and some of them multi-tons in weight. And sometimes the aesthetics, the lighting is so beautiful and moody and low that the focal depth of the camera has been reduced to 6 millimeters. Puppeteering to the accuracy is a real challenge. In fact, in my experience, puppetry is a continuous cycle of solving different flavors of impossible over and over again. In my experience, puppeteers are a funny bunch, and the sheer amount of joy, dedication, and attention to detail that we've put into those performances is really humbling. Some puppets are puppeteered to a pre-recorded voiceover in the studio, perhaps. Sometimes you're asked to produce the voice for the puppet live in the studio. But whichever option you choose, there is so much humor that you can portray through non-verbal puppeteering. One of my claims to fame is my Mr. Fuggles puppet for Charlie Brooker once trended in the UK on the eve of broadcast, and he didn't say anything. He was just mostly sort of staring in shock and gurning, but it still counts, still trended. So why is puppetry so funny and so peculiar? And what could it teach us? One thought that keeps returning to me is the idea of pareidolia. Now, pareidolia is where we imagine patterns and faces that aren't really there. Perhaps if you were to stare into the flames, you could see a fiery, flaming dragon. Maybe you don't see that. Could this be a row of mushrooms? Simple. Or a small fungi family out choosing their home off plan? Let's go with the second. How many of us stare at forms and formations and patterns in clouds, or see faces hidden in the curled bark of trees? Perceiving faces with eyes of knotted pine can lead to the slightly discerning feeling that you might have to defend yourself to the death at any moment. Wrestling with demonic shrubbery might be the stuff of Freudian nightmares, but I do wonder if this pareidolia gives us the innate ability to buy into the life that's reaching out before us, no matter how brief that life might be. If we can imagine an enemy hidden amongst a pile of rocks, or even a friend smothered in the shrubbery, what would it feel like if we puppeteered those rocks or those moss-laden limbs, or again, whatever materials the puppet character might arise from? What kind of creative thrill, what kind of feeling of might versus fright could we engage with if we were the storytellers, if we decided how their stories unfold moment to moment? And what if we were the storytellers that decided how their lives unfold moment from moment? So let's have a go. Let's have a little beginner's guide to puppetry funny peculiar. For those of you who've brought a small piece of fabric with you, now is time to bring it out. Thank you very much for those that remembered. I forgive you, those of you who didn't. I myself got this t-shirt out of the laundry bin. And it wasn't even my laundry bin, so that is a bit weird, isn't it? So let's move him over there. So grab a little bunch of it so that you can make something that could be a head. Maybe you need to fold it over a little bit. There we go. Can you do that? Of course you can. This isn't a kid's show. There we go. Now, we've got one spare hand at the moment, so let's lift up a corner. Grab a corner, so we've got one live hand. Okay, looking good. Let's start with the breathing. Breath is one of the many rhythms we recognize in living creatures, along with laughing, sleeping, checking our social media. Right, let's lift the head up. Your puppet character lives and breathes. It looks around. It becomes aware of itself. Now, if we're performing this in front of a theatre audience, we can share some of that exploration. The eye line, its gaze, can be really helpful in giving it the intention, giving it the essence of independent thought. But maybe our character doesn't see. Maybe it relies on hearing. Or sense of smell. Can you give it a little sniff? Oh, there we go. Okay, didn't need the sound effects, but there you go. Okay, thank you very much. Give it a little bow with your characters. There we go. Thank you. Woohoo! We did it. There we go. A little bit of puppetry, funny, peculiar. If that's being recorded on film or video, then I'm working to a small monitor. And I'm also aware that this puppet is an extension of my hand. But rather like when we learn to drive, those distinctions blur, and I'm able to allow the character to explore its environment. If we're recording a video on live, if it's being broadcast live on telly, then there may be another unknown element, sometimes known as a surprised guest. On CBBC, Emlyn the Gremlin was a bit of a mischief maker. Sometimes the human presenters are there really to apologize for the unhelpful behavior of the puppet character. It's not unusual for puppets to ask the questions that some humans or some adults can't, because maybe it's that they're new to the world or uninterested in social constraint. Emlyn the Gremlin on CBBC once asked the Wimbledon line judge, "If you're such a good judge, how come you're wearing that tie?" If we need more puppeteers than one, if you have a second live hand, or maybe you need some help puppeteering the legs or the body or some nostrils, it's possible to bring in a larger team of puppeteers. It's not unknown for a dozen or more puppeteers all to work in a brilliant collaboration to bring one giant creature into life. So what I would like to suggest, if I may be so bold, is that we all give puppetry a go. If we can all dabble in the funny peculiar of puppetry, maybe we might be able to access that state of being that sports therapists, monks, artists, musicians call being in the zone, flow, living in the moment. All these things bring it together beautifully. Now, I know it's a bit of a stretch to suggest that puppetry might save us from many of our self-induced problems, but I do believe the synergy of puppetry brings it all together beautifully. Have you noticed the resurgence of colouring in books for adults as well as children? I can't help wondering if we are pining for a creative meditation. If puppetry is the perfect synergy of performance and a live manifestation meditation, what other magic can we perform? I know it's a lot to ask us to imagine that puppetry might save humanity from itself, but I can't help thinking that the synergy of puppetry brings it all together beautifully. The touch of something tangible and weighted in a gravitationally affected reality, seeking out the breath, driving our focused attention on something and willing it into life, solving problems that are sculptural, logistical, in real time. It's really satisfying when you work together with other puppeteers so closely that you can create a performance that is improvised in character and in real time. I'd like to think that the slightly unnerving aspect of puppetry may be a vague awareness that we have an awesome creative magic within us all. Puppetry doesn't have to be hilarious to be funny. It doesn't have to be frightening to be peculiar. It's about seeking the materials, feeling the moment, finding that breath, and opening up our minds to the myriad opportunities of the now. Thank you.